So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. And this is 12 reasons why HR software is worth the investment. And I wanted to introduce Joe Rotella with Delphia Consulting. He is the Chief Value Officer. And as you can see, he provides a lot of value. So thanks for jumping on here with us.
Well, and value to you folks. This seminar is pre-approved for both SHRM and HRCI recertification credits. So we will, in the next, give us up to a week, we'll be sending you a certificate of completion for both pre-approved activity codes. If you're a CPA, you might also be able to use this for your CPA recertification. You just have to check with your local CPA provider because the rules vary in every state. And to save room on the screen while we go through the presentation, I'm going to close my camera because you don't need to see all this. We're going to focus on the slides.
Sure. Awesome. So I can close mine as well. Okay, so just a few housekeeping items. I'm Stephanie Scioli. I am a customer success manager over at BrainSell. I have been with the company for about 2.5 years, and I primarily work with our Sage 300 customers. So this webinar, I'm not sure if we're going to switch over to the next slide, but this webinar is a 45-minute presentation with a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So you can type in your questions into the question box, like Joe had mentioned, to submit them throughout our presentation. We will send out a copy of the deck and recording of the webinar and follow-up emails after the event. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Joe.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. I love this quote from Steve Wynn. Human resources isn't a thing we do. It's the thing that runs our business, because employees really are the foundation of every successful business. It's why human resource management is so important. But when I talk with HR folks, when I go see them in their natural habitat, I see folks trying to do this with a hodgepodge of spreadsheets and documents and files on a network drive. It's just crazy. So HR software, sometimes we call it HRIS, HRMS, HCM, it manages people and data throughout the entire employment lifecycle, from recruiting all the way to separation. A comprehensive HRMS will handle onboarding, payroll, self-service, performance management, analytics, the works. And that saves you time. And of course, saving time saves money. But more importantly, I also like to think of it as, if you're saving time and you're not doing some of these administrivia tasks, really, you have more time to focus on strategic initiatives that really helps the organization achieve its vision. So while I have everybody here, before I even jump to the 12 reasons why HRMS is worth the investment, how about click your hand, raise your hand, use the little show your hand icon if you would identify as an HR professional. How many of you out there who have joined us today are an HR professional? So hands are going up. Pretty cool. Thank you. It's about a 50-50 mix. Now I'm going to burst your bubble. I never want you to answer that question like that again. From now on, starting today, I would encourage you to think of yourself as a business professional with expertise in HR, because a business professional can help an organization achieve its vision. And in this case, you can help the organization achieve its vision by helping manage it. What's the foundation of the business? It's human capital, right? And human capital isn't just people with numbers. It's people, processes, environment. That's human capital. It's all of that together. So what we're going to talk about today is HR Software 101, and I'll share some of the basics of HR software. Then we'll cover the 12 reasons why investing in HR software makes sense. I'll show you how you can justify that investment by building a business case. I'll share some tips on how we manage change. And then I have an invitation for you to see Sage HRMS, either standalone or for Sage 100 Cloud or Sage 300 Cloud. So before we begin, I'm just curious, what HR software are you using today? What HR software are you using today? Are you using an Office application like Excel and Word, or maybe you have your payroll software kind of manages some of your HR data. Maybe you're an existing Sage HRMS user, or maybe you use an HRMS from some other publisher. So it looks like GoTo is trying to distribute the poll. It just hasn't made it out there yet. It says distributing. So if you could let me know by voting, right, you should see a poll up there in your audience view. What HR software are you using today? Cool, so about half of you have voted. In the interest of time, I'm gonna have to close out this poll. So if I can get a couple more votes, that would be great. I'm gonna close out the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's see what's out there. It looks like about a third of you are using Office applications like Excel and Word. 2/3 of you are using an HRMS from another publisher, someone other than Sage. So that's fantastic. You've got an investment there in HR software. Let's kind of cover what is HR software. It's really software that manages and optimizes routine HR tasks and the overall HR goals of an organization. It can help the HR team be more efficient. You can automate manual tasks. You've got all your employee information organized. You can create data-driven reports and even eliminate the need for paper documents. It also helps employees and managers. And that's sometimes, I think, where we miss the mark when we're talking to decision makers about HR software is we focus on how much it'll make HR's job easier. Well, with things like time tracking and automated company directories, performance management, self-service, you're really empowering employees and managers to take ownership of their own data and to get answers to questions without calling HR all the time. So this is all part of HR Software 101. Now, HR software really covers a pretty large footprint, and that's the graphic I have over there on the right-hand side. It's software that manages all of the employee lifecycle, from recruiting all the way through separation. The key, the core, that center part strategy is your HRMS, or your HR database, if you will. And then you might have either built into that or add-on modules, depending on the architecture of the software. You could handle recruiting, onboarding, time and attendance, performance management, even people analytics. It can do self-service. You can integrate with payroll. You can track learning and development. You can do benefits administration and management, create workflows, monitor data changes with audit trails. So there's a huge amount of functionality depending on how large you say that footprint covers. There are different types of HR software as well. So common terms you might hear is HRIS, Human Resource Information System, but you also have HRMS, Human Resources Management System, and HCM, Human Capital Management Solution. Sometimes you'll have a dedicated application that just does recruiting. Those are typically referred to as an applicant tracking system. There's also software out there now that does onboarding, software that does performance management, even software that handles employee engagement. Sometimes any combination of things is bundled into HRIS or HRMS. Sometimes they're separate modules, but of course we really want them to talk to one another, to be integrated, because we want to eliminate duplicate data entry, right? Anytime you're doing duplicate data entry, systems can get out of sync, you can make mistakes. So let's dive in and talk about the 12 reasons why it's worth investing in HR software. This is probably my favorite, is improved data management. So if you have a background in information technology, you're probably familiar with the terms single source of truth or single point of truth. This is the idea that we structure information or data schemas so that any piece of data is mastered or edited or owned or lives in only one place. So if you think about all the data we have in the HR world, we've got demographics, compensation, benefits, time and attendance, certifications, and licensures. That's all people-centric data, and I like keeping that all in one place. Now, it doesn't mean you can't share that data with other systems outside of the HR system, but the HR system owns it. That's the single point of truth. That's where you go to make an update. When you make an update, it gets pushed to all these other systems. When you have a model like that, you're really ensuring that everyone is making decisions based on the same data. Nobody's looking at anything that's out of date. It avoids duplicate data entry and all the errors associated with that. And you don't have to worry about who has the latest copy of this. Is this up to date, or really is it up to date over there? And which one is the master, and which one's right, and which one still hasn't been updated? You keep it, own it all in one place, and then share it out. So that's my number one reason why an HRMS is a great thing to have, right? It's a single source of truth for people-centric data. This second one really falls under the category of risk mitigation. This is all about staying compliant. And it's important that you're familiar with the regulations to keep you compliant all the way from hiring to safety to benefit administration, all the way through termination. You want to stay compliant with labor rules and regulations. Every employer has to follow employment laws, including federal, state, and local regulations that are applicable to them. Be advised that a business could be subject to an audit from any enforcing agency, and those folks can levy fines and penalties for non-compliance. And not knowing or understanding your compliance obligations is not an acceptable legal defense. And I've seen cases where lawsuits have completely bankrupted the organization. Now, what you have to do to stay compliant really depends on your size. So I'm curious, can you please share with me, give me an idea how many employees you have? Because when we talk about regulations and rules for compliance, it's all based on how many people you have. So I'm going to leave this poll up here just for a little bit more. And now I'm going to close it out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So size-wise, it looks like about a third of our folks today have less than 50 employees, and that's a key mark. 20 to 50 employees, and then about 2/3 have 100 employees or more. This is why that's important. This deals with just federal labor requirements based on organization size. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. I didn't include state or local laws. I'm not an attorney, so I have to warn you to make sure you consult with your corporate counsel. But what I tried to do is go through and look at all the federal labor requirements. And normally you just see them as a giant list or in alphabetical order. So I regrouped them here to show you what takes effect based on how many employees you have. So the first column all the way to the left, all employers, these are all the acts that you have to stay compliant with, no matter how many employees you have, if you have one or if you have 10,000. As soon as you have 15 or more employees, you have to do everything in the far left, plus add ADA, Title VII, PDA, and GINA. When you hit 20 employees, you have to do all of those things, plus ADEA and COBRA. 50 or more, now you're in the space of adding FMLA and ACA compliance, and then over 100, you have to do annual EEO1 reporting, and you have to pay attention to the WARN Act, the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. So again, if you check out the handouts portion of the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a copy of this slide deck, and this might be one of the most important slides in the deck because you can now go and research these different acts to see what the compliance rules are for each one and make sure you're staying compliant. If you're using an HRS, HRIS, HRMS, it's got built into it the reporting that you need to stay compliant with these different acts, so it takes care of it for you. So having an HRIS can keep you compliant, helps you with risk mitigation. The third reason, and I think Brian Kropp from Gartner sums it up well, that traditional HR methods are failing. In a recent survey, 2/3 of business leaders told us if their company does not digitalize more by 2020, it will no longer be competitive. But in HR, digitalization is changing everything from core functions like the way we hire and develop talent to introducing new burdens such as raising performance. The bulk of this is happening under the automation of routine tasks. You can automate tasks that are time consuming and redundant. Maybe you're constantly entering data and copying data between spreadsheets. Sometimes payroll reconciliation is just a bear. Handling taxes can be awful at times. And for some workers, especially say in the fast food industry, scheduling and improving employee time off requests is a huge burden. The right software can help automate all of those things. It can streamline workflows, and it helps to ensure your processes are consistent. And of course, that also reduces the likelihood of error. The fourth reason we want to think about HR software is hiring the right talent from the get-go. Mark Benioff, the founder and CEO of Salesforce, says acquiring the right talent is the most important key to growth. Hiring was and still is the most important thing we do. It's expensive to hire someone. It's expensive to recruit, to go through applications, to go through the interview process, to onboard someone. And some organizations say that a newly hired employee isn't really contributing to the organization's vision anywhere from 4 months to a year. So we want to keep the talent we have. And when we hire someone new, we want to be sure they're right, because you don't want to make that huge investment and then after so many months or a year say, oh, this person shouldn't even be on our bus. We got to get them off the bus and start all over again. The recruitment process is critical. Doing it right saves money and time, and you'll spend less time on training and supervision. We can also increase the efficiency of the recruiting process. You can build a job post and automatically have it go out to multiple job boards. You can track and manage all your candidates, leverage social media networking to get the word out, and even automatically help sift through and sort applications. You really want to attract the right talent for the right position at the right time. So if your organization does a lot of recruiting, this is one great reason to have HR software. Of course, if you're recruiting folks, you have to onboard them. And here, this quote I love, onboarding shouldn't be painful. We want to create a situation where people say, wow, I can't believe how easy that was. I remember when I started one of my first jobs, which was way back at IBM in Florida back in the 80s, because I worked on the development of the very first PC, when my new hire packet was a pile of paper forms that said, please print or type in blue ink. I had to go make sure I had a blue pen, fill it all in, shove it in one of those manila envelopes with the string ties. Who knows where it went to routing wise after that? And then I'm sure someone typed that all into some system. And really, that's all they thought of is onboarding. But that's not really effective onboarding. Onboarding is a critical process that affects everything from employee performance to even customer experience. And now we have online portals that effectively deliver all the new hire documents. That might include things like federal and state tax forms, policy acknowledgments, even your benefits enrollment. These onboarding portals can automate routine tasks, and now they can even take advantage of filing for WOTC. I'm just curious, show of hands, raise your hand if you're familiar with WOTC, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, if you're taking advantage of WOTC, because I know some organizations right now that are actually financially doing super well by filing all their WOTC forms. So Kimberly's out there using WOTC. If you guys aren't taking advantage of WOTC, I strongly suggest you do a little research about it because it can be a huge financial impact on your organization. The right onboarding software can even track progress and compliance. Have they done these safety training classes? Have they acknowledged the handbook? Did they take this quiz to show that they knew whatever they needed to know for their job? So the fifth reason here is to improve the onboarding process. Of course, once you're onboarded, the odds are you have to track your time. And some organizations will say, oh, our folks aren't hourly, so we don't track time. I'm guessing that you at least track time off. Accurately tracking employee time is a foundational process for every business. And the big key to that is avoiding payroll errors. You don't want to goof up payroll. I read a study recently that said 50% of all employees who've had an error in their paycheck will leave the organization within 6 months. So I think it depends how egregious the error is, but people don't like it when you mess up their paycheck. We also want to reduce labor expenses, and by accurately tracking employee time, you can handle things like buddy punching, missed punches, things like that. We have better oversight for mobile and offsite employees. Really important, especially now as folks are continuing to maybe have either offsite, totally remote work environments or hybrid work environments. And I think accurately tracking time really builds trust between employees and management. You can speed up the time card approval process, better track time off requests. And this goes back to what we said earlier with some of that automation, reducing time creating employee schedules. Now, this is one of my favorites. Reason number 7, empowering employees and managers with self-service, especially in the last 20 months. Boy, have I taken advantage of self-service, and I'm going to use Amazon as the example. I look for things, I buy things, I track if I've sent them to someone as a gift, I attach the e-card to it. I do it all without ever talking to a person. That's similar to self-service. You know, the number one phone call that HR folks get is the whole, how many vacation days do I have left? HR says 6. They say, oh, I thought I had 8. No, I see 6. Oh, I thought I had 8. No, you have 6. Okay, let's go through the list. What do you have? What do I think? Oh, yeah, I missed this one. That takes time. It's a pain. And I don't want to be even the employee that goes through that over the phone. I want to just hit a website, see what's going on. This improves service to employees and managers if they can just see the data, look at it, and in some cases update it, keep it accurate. It saves HR time because it's overwhelming to retrieve data and answer employee questions. SHRM did a study where they said that 40 to 60% of a business professional with expertise in HR's time is spent doing administrivia. Imagine if you could lower that. That gives you more time to focus on strategic activities that helps the organization achieve its vision. So anytime you can avoid you typing in stuff because of a paper form and give it directly to managers, employees, or let them answer their own questions without having to call HR all the time, you're in a better place. And of course, it saves managers time because it gives them the data they need right up front to make better decisions. This is a little survey. I love it. 87% of organizations agree that self-service portals are the most efficient way to provide employees with payroll and HR information. That brings us to reason number 8. Speaking of payroll, it's really all about payroll. And if you're using a different module or application for payroll outside of your HRMS, it's the interface between the two. So I want HR, or the HR system, the HR database, to capture all employee data, including all the data that impacts payroll. So as an example, their employee benefit contributions, their basic demographic information, because that probably affects tax rates, their rate of pay, their direct deposit information, their W-4 history, what you need to stay compliant with ACA. All that data can be inside the HR system. Employees can maintain it through self-service by updating their W-4 if they move, or changing their direct deposit form if they change banks. They can look and see, what are my benefits and what's my contribution, and that can flow right over to payroll. When you share data between HR and payroll, you optimize the process and provide a much more robust user experience. And then from a reporting perspective, HR can use the data inside of the HRS, which may include, right, their compensation history. So you can start to look, hey, are we treating men and women fairly? Are we treating people differently based on age? Is one manager treating folks differently than all the other managers? So we can start to proactively look at the data we have and see if we need to put any interventions in place. And of course, you're only going to have time to do that forward-looking work if you've gotten rid of some of that administrivia. You don't want to just have this pop up because someone has entered into a litigious situation saying, hey, this category of people is treated differently than that category of people. Now, some folks equivalent pay to performance. And this is my 9th reason for having HR software, is to improve performance. I want to jump right to this statistic from Cone. Organizations with highly engaged employees had an average 3-year revenue growth more than 2 times greater than those whose employees showed average engagement. So engagement, it's not the same as job satisfaction, right? It's really about going the extra mile. And it doesn't mean being a workaholic either. But these are the folks who they're passionate about, either their profession or the work they produce, that feeling of my name is on it. Maybe they're passionate about the organization's vision and mission and values. They're even passionate about collaborating with others. Those are actually the 4 types of employee engagement. When you improve performance, you tend to have employees that are more engaged. And right here, we can justify it financially to say, hey, if we can do something to keep employees engaged, we can boost revenue. Setting clear performance measures creates a process that sets clear expectations, and you have the opportunity to provide ongoing coaching and document results. Think about a sports team, Little League. The coach doesn't just sit on the sidelines quiet till the whole game is over and then using a rear view mirror say, okay, let's talk about everything that we did right and everything we did wrong. The coach is interacting with folks during the game because they're trying to improve performance forward looking to win the game. That's what we would call the windshield or the windscreen view. So we want to improve performance while it's happening so that we can get the results we want. And if you're following a traditional performance approach, that's where you set goals, then probably 6 months later do a mid-year review, put it away, then come back 6 months later, do a traditional review, you might be missing the ability to coach all along the way, to measure results all along the way, and make a difference before it's too late. The right software here can also help reduce biases in appraisals. And overall, it makes the whole performance process more objective and valuable. You may even want to link performance information to other data inside the HR system, like compensation. And again, if we can increase employee engagement, we can increase the bottom line. Keeping employees is critical. And Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Group, I love this quote from him. Train people well enough so that they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. Because as I talked about earlier, recruiting folks is expensive. So you want to keep folks. And one of the number one reasons someone stays with an organization is that they feel they have the opportunity to learn and grow. People tend to leave when they feel like this is a dead end. I've gone as far as I can go. There's nothing else in my future. So training and development systems boost retention. You can automatically assign certifications and trainings based on an employee's role, track their requirements, their enrollments, their programs, and more. Alerting will let you know about expiration dates in advance so you can get it addressed before someone's credentials expire. And we'll talk about that in a second. This eliminates costly non-compliance fines. And the results of this, well, increased job satisfaction and morale, increased motivation, increased efficiencies, increased capacity to adopt new technologies and methods, even increased innovation. It increases engagement. Engaged employees stay. So we want to do anything we can to retain employees, and putting learning and development programs, systems, tracking in place can help do that. Now, I mentioned eliminating costly non-compliance fines by knowing in advance that something's going to happen. For example, someone's license certification is going to expire. This is all about alerts and application. You never want to be blindsided by HR data. This category of functionality is called BAM, Business Activity Monitoring, and it lets you respond to critical, time-sensitive HR-related data. Basically, this type of functionality looks for certain conditions and triggers an automated response. What I like to call these things, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, because that's what it does. Yoo-hoo, we just hired someone. IT, they need a workstation. IT, they need access to these parts of the network. Security, they need a badge. Yoo-hoo, facilities, they need a desk. Or maybe when data changes, someone adds benefits or has a life event or moves and you need to tell payroll. Maybe you're monitoring for thresholds like excessive overtime, and you don't want to know at the end of a week or 2 week period that you went way over budget for overtime. You want to know the second you've hit that threshold so you can do something about it. Maybe there's exceptions to the rule. You want to be alerted if someone gets an exceptionally high pay raise or fails a drug test or doesn't finish a training class. You could be alerted for things that don't happen too, like a no hire doesn't show or someone didn't review their visa. Maybe you're going to skim the data and look for data integrity issues. For example, someone didn't fill out everything you needed in an I-9, and you got to get that done within 3 days of someone being hired. You could also look for trends or even inconsistent data, scheduling conflicts, and incorrect labor allocations. You don't have to do this by hand. You don't have to constantly print out reports. And the odds are you're missing some because you don't have time to do that and you're doing it by hand. So let software do it for you. Set up alerts and notifications. And then what's our 12th reason? Well, I think HR software just helps you make better decisions because with the right analytics and dashboards, you can improve decision making by getting insights from your HR data. And you want to use real-time metrics so you can spot trends and manage the workforce effectively. Again, real time lets you look at what's going on right now rather than waiting for a week or two or a quarter or a half a year period, or worse, the whole year to look at performance data, because by then it's too late to make a difference. You can generate reports to help identify problems and patterns and trends. You can even extract and analyze data that you might otherwise miss, things that could help your organization thrive or avoid a litigious situation. All HR systems that I'm aware of have built-in reports, and that saves you time. So you don't want to be building your own EEO1 report or your own OSHA reports. Just pop them right out of the system, or your ACA compliance reports, your 1094 and 1095. Let those all be built in. And how about dashboards with real-time data that let you easily monitor what's important? So over on the right-hand side, I shared 14 common HR metrics that you could consider tracking. Now, there's lots of ways to measure these, and I wouldn't get caught up on exactly how do you measure, say, cost per hire. But as long as you're measuring it consistently for every hire, then you can look at a trend and say whether or not our cost per hire is going up or down. So some of these you can really get caught in the weeds, especially if you have a CPA kind of background and you're worried about things down to the penny. A lot of these I would just say measure whatever you're measuring, measure it consistently and try to look for trends. And again, you've got the handout in the handouts portion of the GoToWebinar control panel so that you have those 14 metrics. Let's say now I've convinced you. You're like, yep, there's 12 reasons that we should invest in HR software. Maybe you don't agree with all of them. Some of them hit you more than others, impact you more than others. But now you want to do something about it. Well, you can't just go to a decision maker and say, hi, I think we should invest in HR software. That's not going to work. You're going to have to write a business case. So let's talk a little bit about what is a business case. Well, if you go into Google and type define : whatever, you'll get a definition. And I like this one from the GAO. A business case is a structured proposal for business improvement that functions as a decision package for organizational decision makers. So let's break that down. Structured proposal means it has an order, it has a structure. There's a way the information should be structured or flow or architected in this document. It's a decision package. In essence, that means this is a sales and marketing document. You are trying to give someone information to cause them to make a decision, hopefully in the way you want it to go, whatever you suggest. And it's specifically written for decision makers. So that means you have to know your audience and know what's important to them. A business case includes an analysis of business process performance and associated needs or problems, proposed alternative solutions, assumptions, constraints, and a risk-adjusted cost-benefit analysis. So we have to outline, why do we need this thing, or what problem are we trying to fix? What alternatives are you considering? Did you make any assumptions? Are there any constraints? And how will this benefit us financially? So another handout you have in the GoToWebinar control panel is a sample business case from the University of Auckland, New Zealand. This is one of my favorites. Now, it's up there as a Word doc, and the parts that you typically change are highlighted in green. But what I really care most about here is the table of contents. So let's look at that. It starts with an executive summary. So depending on your personality type, you're either going to write this last after you've written everything else, like you technically should do, or if you're like me, and you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFP. Ps aren't really good at process. I'm going to write the summary first before I even write the rest of the paper. But this is a short, here's what's going on, here's what I propose to fix it, here's what it's going to cost, we need to do it by this date. Let's break down the rest of this. It starts with the situation or problem. So the situation is we don't have the right HR software, or we don't have the right modules, or we don't have any at all. And that's a problem because, and then look at some of the 12 reasons that I shared. So here you're trying to tell the decision maker, this is what I'm dealing with right here. This is the problem. Either this is the problem we're trying to fix or the gain we're trying to achieve. Next is the opportunity. And I like to think of the opportunity as why now? Why now? Think about your own environment. You might have had the same HR software for months, years, or not had any for months or years. Why is now the right time? Did it just come to your attention? Is something on sale? Are your needs changed? Suddenly now you're growing and you need to recruit more, or you're downsizing and you need to separate. Maybe you're losing folks to competitors. Why now? Then you're going to give your recommendation and then list some of the benefits of that recommendation. And then this next one, alignment to strategies. Here's my tip. Go find your organization's strategic plan or vision or whatever they might call it. It's typically written by your leadership. See something O's maybe? Align what you're trying to do to that strategy or vision and use some of the exact same words. By having the right HRIS, we will be able to blah, 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 blah. And the blah, 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 blah is exactly the words that were in that strategy document. Because, I'm a see something O, but I can tell you now, I'm going to read it and say, oh, that looks pretty good. Wow, that sounds great. Who wrote that? Oh, and I might even remember that. Oh, I did a year or two ago, right? So align it to what the organization cares about. Then you're going to talk about the costs, the background to what got you here today. You might even say, hey, I saw a presentation that was pre-approved by SHRM about the reasons to invest in HR software, kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I learned a little bit. I continued to investigate, blah, blah, blah. Here's where I'm at. Now, what are the options? Every business case has at least two options. You are proposing we do this, that's one of them, or do nothing. We could do nothing. We could stay exactly where we're at today. And here's what happens if we do that. And here's my option. And here's what happens if we do that. Now, this has three options, the do nothing, the A, and the B. I would never give more than three to your decision makers because then they get overwhelmed. And then they're going to start researching on their own. I would stick to two, do nothing, or option A, or three, do nothing, A, and B. Then you lay out your objectives, any assumptions you made, the scope, what is excluded. Very important. Don't assume, boy, I know Joe really cares about mobile friendly, and this isn't mobile friendly, so I'm just not going to mention it. Because guess what? They're going to find out at some point, and it's going to come back to bite you. So be upfront. This does not include this, this, this. What are the key outputs? How are you going to measure success? How do you know you crossed the finish line? The key output is we're going to have this in place by this date. Maybe you've got some constraints. We have to work around somebody's vacation or some risks. Our current system is expiring on this date. We have to get this in by that date to replace it, or we will be at risk of having no system. Any key dependencies, your strategy, how does it fit into your organization's security model, even your IT architecture? What are the costs? And then the financial analysis. Of course, it's got conclusions, your final recommendations, and a sign-off sheet. That's critical, right? I need a decision by this date. Sign here. Now, this looks like it could be a huge Word doc, but you can have a business case in a paragraph or two via email. Even our IT folks. When I first started at Delphia, I brought an IT person with me from Bell Labs. And when he got there, Delphia had a very old printer, a wax color printer. Most of you probably have never seen a wax-based printer. So he popped in my office. He used to call me Chief. Hey, Chief, I want to go up to Micro Center and get us a new printer. This one's terrible. And I was like, he's like, give me your credit card. I'm like, no, what do you mean no? Because I thought, oh, this is a learning moment. Hey, Brandon, take this outline and go write a business case why we need a new printer. Now, if you've ever asked an IT person to write a document, you can just imagine the looks I got. But he went away for a couple hours, and then all of a sudden I got an email, and it was pretty short and sweet. Executive summary: we need a new printer, and I want to go buy one today because they're on sale at Micro Center. The situation: we have an old printer. I can't find replacement ink for it. If it dies, I don't know how to fix it. Opportunity: there's a big sale going on at Micro Center this week only. I recommend an HP, blah, blah, blah. The benefits are it's popular, it's reliable, the ink is cheap. It aligns to your strategies because I know one of our visions is to have the best looking presentations in the competitor space, and this will help them make look great. Here's what it costs. We could do nothing, and if this dies, we're messed up until I can find a replacement, or we could get the replacement. We have to get it done before I go on vacation next month, and before the sale ends this week, we have to buy it. Here's what it's going to cost. I need your decision today. Now, was it a big formal business case? No. But did it get the point across with the right structure in a couple paragraphs? Absolutely. And I said yes. But let's focus on this financial part. And that's the one downside of this particular business case outline, is it really structures it all around a financial return on investment. And I would encourage you to noodle a bit. I think every business proposal can have up to 3 different return on investments: financial, cultural, and procedural. So cultural: imagine you're in a Google-like white collar environment and you're having people fill out W-4s on paper. That just doesn't fit their culture. And process-wise, somebody has to type all that in and could make a mistake. If we go to online, it could improve our culture, it could improve our process, and of course, by making those improvements, you're going to have some sort of financial return. So you can always boil time down to a financial ROI, but I like calling out the procedural and cultural ones as well. So let's talk a little bit about return on investment. It's really the amount of profits or savings you'll realize from any given use of money. There's lots of ways to calculate ROI. It could be payback period, return on cash outlay, discounted net present value. My favorite is payback period because it's easy for me to understand. I'm not an accountant type. I don't love numbers. So let's just look at this example. We have the monthly cost of a solution today. So the way we're doing something today costs us about $500 a month. I want to propose a different way to do it that's going to cost us $11,000. So our payback period, and that's a one-time cost. So our payback period is 11,000 divided by 500, means this thing will pay for itself in 22 months. What's really cool is starting on month 23, we're not outlaying that 500 anymore. So we're in essence, double quote, making money. We're really saving money, right? But that's payback period. Here's an example. This is all about an HRMS with employee self-service. So on the left-hand side, that's where we are today. Let's say we have no HR software, we have 150 employees, about 141 employees, 7 managers, 2 HR folks. That's statistically reasonable. SHRM actually says you should have an HR person for every 50 employees. So here we're actually a little short, but I think this is realistic. They make about 69K a year. Managers, it's a very flat organization, right? Check this out. We have 7 managers for 140 people. So every manager has about 20 direct reports. I filled in their average pay and their hourly costs. Now, this is a built-in spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet's available in the handouts portion of the GoToWebinar control panel. So you can twiddle the numbers, add things to think about, make it your own, but it's a good starting point. I'm figuring employees spend about 2 hours a year doing HR stuff, right? This could be looking up how many vacation days they have left, double checking their benefits, maybe looking at their pay history, maybe filling out a performance appraisal form. Manager, and that cost us 2 hours times 141 folks times $21 an hour is about $5,900. We have about 50 managers or 7 managers, but they're spending about an hour a week, right? 52 weeks in a year, 2 weeks they're on vacation. So every week they spend about an hour approving time, reviewing time, maybe dealing with disciplinary stuff, performance stuff. Now, HR, I put down only 250 hours a year. Remember what I said? Sherm said people spend 40 to 60% of their time. If there's 2,000 hours in a work year, 250 hours is just a little bit above 10%, right? So I think this is incredibly low if you don't even have an HR system. I bet you're doing a lot more by hand and spending more time. But again, there's a spreadsheet in the handouts window for you to download and fiddle with this. So I'm guessing that we spend about 32K a year. Granted, this is soft money. This is how people are spending their time doing HR stuff. It comes down to about 2,700 bucks a month. So now on the right-hand side, we're looking at some HR software that has employee self-service built in. It's a subscription-based system. So that's about 4,400 bucks the first year, 4,600 bucks the second year. I assumed a little bit of an increase. The first year it has to be implemented, right? Somebody has to set this whole thing up. That cost doesn't exist the second year. And then in this case, it's being hosted. So this is an ASP, application services provider model, where maybe you subscribe to the software. So it's still not perpetual, it's still subscription based, but it could be on-prem or hosted, and these folks decided to go hosted. So we threw up hosting costs. Now, people are still going to spend time on HR stuff. Employees still have to go look stuff up. It's just a lot faster than a phone call. So I put down they would save 90% of their time, meaning they will spend 10% of the time over on the left. So 5,950 bucks becomes 595. See how that works? So here, the first year cost of this system is about 15,520 bucks. If we divide that by the left hand, 2,700, it means it kind of pays for itself in 6 months. And the second year, you're in essence saving 22K. Now, you're going to say this isn't hard money. We're not really saving it. It's not going to, go to the bottom line of a financial statement, but it's time is money. And imagine if you're spending that equivalent in time doing something strategic that really does impact the organization's bottom line compared to the administrivia. I think that's where you start to justify this with the ROI and then talk about how that time could be spent. Maybe getting employees engaged, which we know increases the bottom line 2.3 times greater than organizations with average engagement, according to Cohn a few slides back. That's the kind of financial ROI that I'd want to see in your business case. Now, change is tough. And some folks, like me, don't like change. I never go seek it out. If you dump it on me, I can handle it, but I'm not one to go seek it out. So I wanted to share some tips with you about change management. Gain executive sponsorship and commitment early. You don't want to leave this webinar and think, oh, I think HR software would be great, or changing the one we have would be great. I'm just going to go research it all and then present it to management. That's never going to work. You don't want to go for buy-in. You want to upfront talk to your executives, talk to your decision makers, get them to at least acknowledge, yes, now's a good time for us to even consider this. Then go forth, do your homework. Define and commit to a timeline. I have a Samsung Galaxy Note 5 phone. They're up to Note 20s. My problem is every time because I'm going to buy a new phone, I research every single phone out there because I'm a bit OCD. And by the time I finish the research, a whole new models have come out and I have to start all over again. If I would just commit to a timeline, I could get the job done and I wouldn't have a Note 5 anymore. Know your budget. You don't want to be at a Rolls-Royce dealership with a Volkswagen budget. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but at least know what you can afford and stay in that range. Stay focused. Don't get distracted by bright, shiny things or features that are in the software that you don't care about. I have a whole nother presentation just about how to select software, and it starts with knowing your own needs. Look at where you are today, where you want to be, and mind the gap, just like the message on the London subway. Make a list of your needs and focus on that. Stay organized. I'm not organized, but if you think about all the data that would come in as part of a selection process and then writing up the business case, you need these in folders and directories and structured with labels because you're going to get confused with this giant stack of papers. And be sensitive to risk factors. So I always pick on Marge. Marge is my stereotype payroll person. And Marge has done payroll for 120 years, and she doesn't like change. And most payroll people, they don't like change, which is good. We want them to get it right, right? But you can't roll in a new system and not think about how's this going to impact Marge. She knew stuff nobody else knew about this system, and now she's going to lose that magic from her wand. So how do you want to keep Marge? She's a great person. How do we introduce something without blowing her out of the water? This is all about being sensitive to change management issues. So hopefully we've spent about 45 minutes together. You have a good indication of 12 reasons to invest in HR software. And before, I wonder if we should hold Q&A and I can do our next. Do you think I should do our next slide, Stephanie? Just so we don't miss it if we run out of time with questions.
Sure. Yeah.
So I do want to invite you to join us for a webinar on October the 5th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to be called Sage HRMS, Comprehensive Customizable HR Software. So today we just focused on the theory. That's why this was pre-approved for Sherman HRCI credits about why an investment in HR software makes sense. So this webinar, we're actually going to demo software. You're going to see what HR software is all about. You can register online. That link is right there in the PDF. So you can click that link and register. Boom, you're good to go. So with that, let's see, do we have any questions that I can answer for anybody?
We do. We got a few questions. So the first one we have is, how long does it take to get it up and running in our environment?
Well, I wish I had a wand and I could give you the standard answer for everybody. It really depends how much you're implementing. But I would suggest you don't implement everything all at once, like a new HR system with recruiting and onboarding and performance management and everything all at once. That's kind of the Big Bang theory, which makes me nervous. I would say you can typically implement the basics of your HR system anywhere from, oh my gosh, 3 weeks to 3 months. It all depends how much you're customizing it and how many modules you're adding it to it. But I bet you could be up and running in as little as 3 or 4 weeks. The delay usually is you can't spend full time working on it and you're so busy doing other things, it kind of slips. So again, you want to have a plan, work with your business partner to get a plan and stick to it.
Awesome. Okay, the next one we have, between Excel and payroll software, it seems like we have all of our HR needs covered. Can you think of anything we are missing? Good question.
I think the payroll software probably has limited demographics, right? It has the person's name, social security number, pay rates, and maybe you're keeping track of some of this other stuff in Excel. I think what you're missing is, do you really have all the HR data you need to be compliant? If it's only in Excel, how are you generating your OSHA safety reports or your EEO1 report or your compliance reports? And how proactive are you at reporting to look at places where you could have an intervention and make a difference? I think that combination of Excel and payroll is probably getting the job done really well for just get paychecks out. But I'm really not sure it's helping your employees with going and finding data, answering questions, kind of that whole bigger picture. Managing your people is important. Having that people data is important.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last question we got, you showed a ton of stuff in the HR picture you showed. We don't need everything. For example, recruiting. Do we need to buy all of that?
Well, that's a hard question. So I'm going to let Stephanie handle that one. Go to it, Stephanie. No.
No, you don't. No.
So if you think about Sage HRMS, there's really two kinds of software out there. There's best of breed, right? Best of breed. And then there's single source. Single source is everything's coming from one provider. Typically, it's a SaaS, software as a service model, and it's all or nothing. You get it all or you get nothing, and it's very hard to customize. It's kind of like renting an apartment building, an apartment in a big building in New York City, where you can customize your own little apartment, but you're not changing the lobby or the elevators. What it is what it is, and it's for everybody the same in the building. Sage HRMS is best of breed, meaning you pick and choose the modules that's right for you, and you can even choose whether or not it comes from Sage or somebody else. So in that case, for best of breed might be the one you'd want to go if you're in that situation, because if recruiting's not important to you, you don't buy it, you don't pay for it. Or maybe you don't need a big applicant tracking system, you just need a little online application. That's it. You're not tracking applicants and interviews and scheduling and all that jazz. So
Mhm.
that's really where you can kind of pick and choose. Well, it
Perfect.
looks like we got another one.
Yeah, we just had one more come in. You mentioned that this system will work with Sage 100. How about Sage 50?
So there are ways to interface. The nice thing is Sage 100, Sage 50, and Sage HRMS all come from Sage. So right there, you're in the same ecosphere, and there are ways that that integrates together. I could probably send you an email with like more of a detailed bullet list because it's different depending on every accounting or ERP system. And to be honest, I lose track between 100, 300, 500 intact. I mean, they just go on and on and on, but it
Mhm.
does integrate with Sage 50, and we'll send you an email with some of the details. We'll get Stephanie and her folks will follow up. How's that? And if
Perfect.
you want to see it, you just have to let us know and we'll set up a time where we can show you how the two work together.
Yeah. Yeah, so that concludes the question and answer part of this. But as Joe said, please join us October 5th for our second webinar of the series. We'll send the registration page to you during our follow-ups. And if you do want to schedule a customer demo for Sage HRMS, you can contact growth@braincell.net or reach out to your CSM at BrainSell. So I really appreciate everyone being on here this afternoon and taking time out of your day. And Joe, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. You were a great co-host.
Thank you.
Go get some lobster and think of me.
Exactly, I will. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.